afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our briefing to discuss the outbound powered flyby burn that occurred 7:44 a.m. Eastern Time this morning, and shortly thereafter, our closest approach to the moon at just 81 statute miles above the lunar surface. Additionally, today we're going to be discussing the post-launch assessments of the Space Launch System rocket and Exploration Ground Systems at Kennedy Space Center. Joining me today, I have Mike Seraphin, the Artemis 1 mission manager, Judd Freeling, a flight director, and Howard Hugh, Orion program manager. We're going to start off with some opening remarks from our guests before we move into the Q&A portion. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
All right, thank you, Leah, and good afternoon. Thank you for continuing to follow the Artemis program and the Artemis 1 mission. Right now, we are setting up to orbit the moon. We had the big burn called the outbound powered flyby occur earlier today, and that was, to date, the largest propulsive event as Artemis is hunting the moon to accomplish the distant retrograde orbit in our stress test of the Orion spacecraft. As we enter the middle leg of this mission, we've largely completed the outbound leg towards the moon. We're going to have a period of time circling about the moon in the distant retrograde orbit, and then we're going to have the return leg. And if we could bring up the Artemis 1 mission map, I'll walk you through a couple of key decisions here. If you look at that green line, as we've headed from the surface of the Earth on the middle of last week through the point of translunar injection, and we completed the disposal of the Irem-Kral propulsion stage, and our rocket did its job, and Orion has initiated the start of that outbound powered flyby. Earlier today, we performed what is bullet number 9 on that graphic, and we're setting up for the distant retrograde insertion, which is that gray racetrack about the moon. So that first leg, the green leg, is largely complete, and we will officially enter that distant retrograde orbit when we complete the distant retrograde insertion here later this week. The middle leg will be half a lap in that distant retrograde orbit, and we will be coming up in a little over a week on the farthest point from Earth at bullet number 11 before we initiate the return leg, that blue leg, where we depart the distant retrograde orbit, and then at bullet 13 essentially perform our deorbit maneuver from over 250,000 miles away at the return powered flyby. So in terms of decision gates, we had a number of pre-planned decision gates. The mission management team is going to meet on the following dates to set up for the key decision gates. We could adjust these if we need to, but on November 30th, we will meet to discuss departing the distant retrograde orbit, which is essentially reversing that 2-maneuver sequence through bullets 12 and 13 on that mission map. And that sets up the distant retrograde departure on December the 1st, followed by the return powered flyby on December the 5th. A following decision gate will occur on December the 5th. Now that we're setting up the return leg home, we will be meeting to decide to deploy the recovery forces. A joint U.S. Navy and NASA team will depart on a recovery ship from Naval Base San Diego, and that will set up for the ship's departure on or about December the 6th for the recovery zone in the Pacific Ocean. And then on December the 8th, Judd will bring in a recommendation as our entry flight director, along with Melissa Jones, our recovery director, in combination with the U.S. Navy, and we'll pick a landing site out in the Pacific, and it'll be based on a whole host of factors, but also weather. We've got to decide where our best weather is, and we could sail up to 1,200 nautical miles from our nominal landing site uprange and still meet our entry conditions. So those are the three big decision gates: November 30th, December 5th, and December 8th. In the meantime, the mission continues to proceed as we had planned, and the ground systems, our operations teams, and the Orion spacecraft continue to exceed expectations, and we continue to learn along the way about this new deep spacecraft. In terms of the mission management team, since the last time I spoke with you, we did meet on Saturday, November the 19th, which was flight day 4. We had a 2-hour decisional meeting, which the decision was whether or not to commit to the distant retrograde orbit. The vehicle systems were very clean. We were working only a number of funnies in terms of what I would call a difference from what we expected the vehicle to perform, but none of those were constraints to committing to the distant retrograde orbit. So all of the team members polled as go for the distant retrograde orbit, and then our flight ops team executed the outbound powered flyby earlier today. We did also on Saturday discuss 2 special topics, which I'll elaborate here in a few minutes. And the first was the Space Launch Systems post-launch performance report, as well as the Exploration Ground Systems post-launch performance report. We did not meet on Sunday, November the 20th, largely because things are going really well. And I think the fact that we didn't meet on Sunday is a great sign. We also worked some feedback from the media and from the team on keeping and improving the flow of information and expediting imagery, and that I hope you're seeing some improvements along the way. But we did hear the feedback, and we are working on that. Today, we met as a mission management team for 1 hour, and it was a non-decisional meeting, but we largely resynchronized the team. We discussed the results of the outbound powered flyby. We talked about a exterior imagery survey of the spacecraft using the solar array wingtip cameras. We looked at the back shell thermal protection system, as well as a number of external surfaces on the spacecraft, and there were no concerns identified as a result of that external survey. And we do have 2 anomaly resolution teams currently in work under Howard's mission evaluation room that are reviewing some bits that are being set on the star trackers periodically that we're recovering with the power cycles, as well as some funny indications that we're seeing on the power system, and those are again not seen as hard concerns or hard constraints. We're just trying to understand those better as we're flying and executing the flight test in the flight environment. So those are the decision gates that we have ahead of us, as well as the recent activities with the mission management team. In terms of the post-launch performance summary that we had with the Space Launch System rocket, I will simply say that the results were eye-watering. The rocket performed and or exceeded expectations. Everything was either on predict or off by less than 1%. In fact, it was off by less than 0.3% in all cases across the board. The day of launch, we had the solid boosters. They had a propellant bulk temperature of 77 degrees, which is well within the mid-range. It wasn't on the hot end like we had for the prior launch attempt, and it's certainly not on the cold end of what's tested. It was in the mid-range. The boosters performed as planned and as predicted. The core stage performed as planned and as predicted. The insertion altitude, we missed by 3 nautical miles. We planned on a 972 by 16 nautical mile orbit. When you think about the size of the system that we have and how much performance it puts out, when the engines are at full throttle, we're producing 2 million pounds of thrust out of the 4 RS-25 engines. The core stage engine shutdown missed by 7 feet per second, which is simply remarkable. That is well within the error and noise bands of the system. In terms of the interim cryopropulsion stage, it was spot on in terms of the translunar injection as well as the disposal. The RL-10 engine on the interim cryopropulsion stage set a record for the duration for the translunar injection burn. It is the longest firing in the history of the RL-10 program at 18 minutes. There were no failures on the entire Space Launch System stack, and there were 5 observations. None of those are of consequence or of any particular constraint to the flight of crew. All of the separation events, again, were as designed and as predicted. So again, we had eye-watering performance of the Space Launch System rocket. In terms of the exploration ground systems performance, we did go all the way from the operations in the firing room to the activities at the launch pad and the mobile launcher and the pad itself. We reviewed all of those items. We do have some images here for you. First and foremost, the kindler and gentler loading operation that we learned out of the prior launch attempts performed as expected. The team operation was great as well, and we successfully executed the load there. The software for the Launch Control Center and the handover of the command and control again met all of our expectations. The ignition overpressure and sound suppression system to dampen the acoustic shock and keep the deck of the mobile launcher protected from the flames of the Space Launch System as it lifted off, performed as expected. The mobile launcher umbilical releases were all within specification and performed as expected, and the mobile launcher structure itself held up well, and the structural inspections have all passed there. If we could roll the video of the drone footage of the mobile launcher, this is essentially a top-down look of the entire mobile launcher, and this is the side that faces the rocket as it lifted off. You can see all the umbilicals in the retracted position, and we will go all the way down to the deck of the mobile launcher here. And, you know, we do have a little bit of discoloration simply from the heat of the rocket, but all of the interfaces are in good shape. The mobile launcher itself it has a little bit of damage to it, but it will be ready to fly the crewed launch on Artemis II. And here we are looking down into the flame trench. The damage that we did see pertained to really just a couple of areas on the zero deck. If we could pull up the image of the elevator doors, we did. All right, so here we're seeing the image of the mobile launcher deck. We have exhaust that comes out of the solid boosters that is right at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And we had a large amount of water come out of the water birds and the water sound suppression system to keep the deck protected. You can see here that the water sound suppression did a great job, with the exception of right around the edges of the flame trench. If we could go to the next photo. And here you're simply seeing some of the paint discolored and paint removed. This is the entire deck of the mobile launcher, and you see the 2 tail service mast umbilicals that are in the foreground on the right. Our launch director, Charlie Blackwell Thompson, says she walked into the tail service mast umbilicals, and they were pristine inside. So all of the enclosures and all of the close-up activities to basically button this thing up as the rocket was lifting off protected all the hardware there. There's our elevator doors. The elevator system is not functioning right now. We had the world's most powerful rocket, and in the pressure basically blow the doors off of our elevators. This is why it took a little longer to inspect the mobile launcher. Is a very tall structure, and right now the elevators are inoperable, and we need to get those back into service. And then if we look at the next photo, I love this photo. When I saw it, I was like, wow. This is one of the cameras on the zero deck of the mobile launcher being looked at from the 274-foot level on one of the towers. So you can see, again, the heat of the boosters scorching the camera. The camera housing survived, but it just goes to show the environment there on the zero deck is not the friendliest when you have the world's most powerful rocket lifting off. Again, that said, we did a thorough inspection of the mobile launcher, and it has passed. The only items that are noteworthy of damage are the ones that I've shown you there. We did have 2 cameras out. We also did have some damage to pneumatic lines associated with gaseous nitrogen and gaseous helium, and that in turn caused the oxygen sensors on the pad to show that there were low oxygen readings until we got the leaks in the pneumatic lines isolated, which is why it took a little longer to gain access out at the pad. In terms of did we find any flight items? You don't want to find flight items at the pad, right? In terms of did we find flight items, we found 2. The first was the booster throat plug material, which is purposefully expelled from the throat of each booster at liftoff when the boosters ignite. And we did find that in the pad perimeter. We did need a little bit of time to map that out. That is a very normal thing, finding the booster throat plug material. And then we did find one piece of the RTV material from the Orion spacecraft. It is unclear whether that was actually liberated during launch or whether that was released during the hurricane, but it was found on the infield. So overall, again, a very clean system. The exploration ground systems exceeded our performance. We did have a little bit of damage, and the mobile launcher will be ready to support Artemis 2, and we had accounted for that previously in our replan and our budget for the time between Artemis 1 and 2. Let's see, and then if we could pull up some additional images of the optical navigation sensor. We have been testing and certifying the optical navigation sensor, and here is a view of Earth from our optical navigation sensor on board Orion. And then the next image, I believe, is of the moon from the optical navigation sensor. And this is essentially an alternative means of gaining or updating our navigation on board the spacecraft. The last image that I'll show and share with you is the much sought after Snoopy image, and we did get an image released today. The administrator released the image of Snoopy. He is in the lower center, floating near the empty seat, and we've highlighted him here. So that is our zero-G indicator Snoopy. Again, we're proud to have him on board as a symbol of flight safety. I personally am wearing my silver Snoopy that I received here, because this is not just about flying flight hardware. This is about being as safe as we can, given the hostile environment that we're flying into for astronauts, and we take this very seriously. Flight safety for our astronauts is paramount. So with that, we've gone through a lot of materials in the last couple of days, and happy to talk more about those in whatever questions you might have. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Leah.
Thanks, Mike. And I will pass it over to our Artemis 1 Ascent and Entry Flight Director, Judd Freeling.
All right. Thanks, Leah. Let's see. So we continue to test out the vehicle and put it through its paces to make sure we understand exactly how to operate it. Previous to this morning, we have exercised all 3 means that we have of providing translational capability for our orbit adjusts maneuvers. So in orbit outbound trajectory corrections 1, 2, and 3, we successfully exercised the OMS engine and then the RCS, or the reaction control system engines, to provide translational thrust. And then our third burn, we exercised the +X, or auxiliary engines, and they all worked perfectly. Great story there. Leading up then to this morning, we had outbound powered flight, as was mentioned. that was the largest burn, as Mike mentioned, to date at about 586 foot per second. It was about a 2.5 minute burn on the backside of the moon that successfully started our entry into the distant retrograde orbit. So it's a part of a 2-burn sequence. The second sequence is going to be the DRO or direct a DRO insertion burn that is going to be on Friday. Let's see, if you roll a video, we had some great video leading up to our outbound powered flight, and we were able to live stream that. This is absolutely amazing to me. You can see the Earth kind of setting towards the moon that's in sunlight there. I came in this morning and was just stunned at watching this video. Right, I think we have the other video of Earthrise as well. Do we have that one on the backside? Nope, we don't. On the backside, we had a good Earthrise as well. The moon, however, was not in sun, so we just saw kind of the Earth popping out from what looked like a black mass, and so that was a really good, interesting way to view the Earthrise. Let's see. I think we have another picture here of the trajectory that we took as we went across the moon's surface. So the first one kind of gives an overview picture of the trajectory. Here we go. And as you can see, the sun's kind of behind the moon in this case, and so it makes the front side of the moon that's facing Earth in darkness. This is a representation of how where we did the outbound powered flight maneuver. That was we were approximately 328 statute miles above the Earth when we performed that burn. As you can see, these are the sites of all of the Apollo missions and where they actually landed. So I'll show you the next slide, please. Shows you as we get a little bit closer, you can see that's the point of closest approach that we had after OPF, where, as Leah mentioned, we were 81 statute miles above the surface of the moon. Next slide. I think we have a ground track that actually shows. We don't have that. Okay. So shortly after that point, we actually went directly over the Apollo 11 landing site, and we were about 1,300 statute miles above that. Obviously, we were in darkness at the time, so we weren't able to get pictures of that. But what I will tell you is that on our return powered flyby burn, the moon is expected, the Earth-facing part of the moon is expected to be in sun, and so we're working a plan to see if we can get pictures of those Apollo landing sites as we're flying by. One thing I'll note is we didn't expect to get live stream video like we got today, and the reason was our pre-flight predictions said we would not have enough bandwidth to downlink all of the files that we plan to do for critical telemetry, as well as do live stream. As part of the testing of the system, that means we're also testing out the deep space network, and so we're kind of probing and seeing how far we can press those bandwidth limitations. And it turns out prior to that we were able to be able to live stream. So from this point forward, that's going to be one of our priorities. When we have the bandwidth available, we'll go ahead and live stream video from Orion whenever we're not doing CIT payloads or Callisto payload events or other actions where we need the higher bandwidth. And so I think, Leah, we've got a Ustream website that will be putting that, and so it'll be available on the web all the time. So that'll be a good news story. Additionally, I would say in the interest of testing the system and giving you an idea of how long it takes to get data down, I think all of us are used to the ISS and how quickly we get data down there. I can tell you on ISS, when we downlink data, we get about a gigabit of data. It takes us less than a minute to get down. But in the deep space network, the data rates that we're experiencing on Orion, to get that same gigabit of data originally took us 90 minutes. So, you know, a lot longer. The tests that we've been doing and trying to help that bandwidth problem, we've gotten that down now to about 45 minutes to get that 1 gigabyte of data, but it's still a relatively long amount of time, and we've got lots and lots and lots of data to get down. And obviously, that high resolution data and video takes a long time to downlink. So, but we're doing our best we can, and we'll continue to download those as we can. I'll also mention, in the interest, you know, Mike showed the pictures of the OpNav pictures of both the Earth and the Moon. That has now been certified, so it's actually a nav source now we can use if we were to lose communications with the Orion spacecraft. It would automatically use that as a nav source to navigate back home with all of the pre-planned commands that we put on board. So that's a good news story. I'll tell you, also in the veins of the performance of the vehicle, from the propellant budget, we're doing really well. We've used over 3,700 pounds of prop to date, which is about 76 pounds less than we expected from pre-flight predictions. And it's also about 2,100 pounds above what we require for the end of mission. And that translates into about 560 some odd foot per second available to us above what we need for the mission. So that's a really good news story. The last thing I'll tell you is DRI, the DRO insertion burn is going to happen on Friday. That's going to be another big burn, not quite as big as the OPF maneuver, the outbound powered flyby maneuver. That's going to come in around 362 foot per second. So that's all I have for now. So Leah, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Judd. And I will turn it over to Howard Hugh, Orion Program Manager.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I think Mike and Judd stolen some of my thunder, but the vehicle continues to operate exceptionally. We have seen really good performance across the board on all our subsystems and systems, and certainly really happy with the performance. And today was a terrific day. You know, we started early in the morning and getting ready for the OPF, and we saw tremendous performance coming out of that. You know, I'll just put a finer point on what Judd said earlier. You know, we were expecting a 585 or 589 foot per second on that OPF burn, and we did it in 585.9. So really great performance of the prop system, and continued so. And Judd said something else. You know, we've exercised all three of our propulsive elements, the main engine, our auxiliary engines, and RCS across the various correction burns and the OPF, and they've all performed very well, and the overall prop system has maintained the pressure and executed and regulated the propulsive elements really excellently. So we're very happy with that. Overall, like I said, our performance continues to be going very well. Another point I think we discussed, my colleague discussed at the last briefing, you know, we're generating a lot of power. We're generating over 22.32% more power than we had planned out of the solar arrays. Very good. And of course, we're also using less power, 34.31%. So overall, in the power system, great performance there, along with the prop system. And I would say that, you know, Judd also said about our OpNav, that's really a backup case where we lose permanent, or we have loss of comm with the ground. Our overall navigation system is performing as expected and really well, and we're getting obviously good ground inputs on our state updates for the nav system, and we expect that to continue as well. Let's see, finally, I would say that you know, all the images you saw and all the videos, and Judd talked a little bit about increase and learning about how much to push on in terms of performance on DSN. You know, it took, I would thank the flight control team, and our engineering team. They did a great job last night of trying to figure out how we can best position ourselves to get all these great images and great videos that we've seen throughout the day and what you've seen today, and really thank the team, because I think the team has done tremendous work giving us the highlights of what the mission images and all the video that we've seen, and really happy to see what we see from the moon, and of course looking back on the Earth. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Leah.
Thanks, Howard. And a live view now inside the White Flight Control Room here in Mission Control Houston of those teams working around the clock all the way through splashdown. So we're going to open it up for question and answer at this time. If you are on the phone and would like to ask a question, please press *1 to raise your hand and *2 to withdraw your question if it has already been asked. I also ask that you please state your name and affiliation as well as to whom your question is directed, and please limit to one question at a time. That way we can address everyone and potentially get to some follow-ups afterward. So we can start here in the room.
Thank you. Mark Carreau with Aviation Week and Space Technology. My question's for Judd. We've heard a lot about the flight hardware, the launch control team. I'm just wondering about the flight control team. Do you think they're learning a lot, or how would you describe what they're learning and how that plays forward with Artemis?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Great question. So you're absolutely right. Not only is this flight about learning about the hardware, but it's also learning about how the humans interact with the hardware. And I would say we absolutely are learning a lot about just the few examples that I gave you about how do you how much off predicts are you going to be? What kind of ways can you optimize performance of the vehicle? How do we do the burns in an efficient manner? What do we do to prep the navigation system for them? So it's all kinds of things that we learn that you just can't simulate, because our simulators are only as good as what we thought and predicted pre-flight. And so now we're getting a really good opportunity to kind of anchor not only the engineering models that Howard has, but also the operational models that we're using in the control center.
Okay. Another here in the room.
Gina Sinceri, ABC News for Howard. Last week after launch, you said you dreamed of this since you were a little kid. Is it living up to your expectations?
Above and beyond, I would say. I was telling somebody today that we're coming in every day, and it doesn't seem like work. I mean, it is just fabulous. I want to hear the information that's coming from the spacecraft, learning about the spacecraft, and being excited about what we're doing, and it's just been phenomenal. I got a big smile every day. I just see people and I'm smiling, and it's just been terrific. Thank you.
Eric Berger with Ars Technica. I think a lot of us share that excitement too, Howard. Question for you and then one for Mike. First of all, you said you did an exterior survey. I know MMOD was a concern on this flight. Were you able to get any data on that? It sounds like it looked pretty clean. And then for Mike on the EGS question, you've got plenty of time to work on this for Artemis 2, but in the future you'd like to increase cadence. So are there steps you can take to sort of mitigate the damage that occurred to the mobile launch tower from this flight to sort of that you'll be able to address that? Just any words on that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, let me start. So Mike mentioned we did, our engineering team did a full look at the entire spacecraft with the images we got from our solar array cameras and cleared it. No MMOD damage that they could see. And so I think it was an exhaustive analysis that the team went through already, and they actually cleared us for re-entry. So it was a really good set of work by the team. Of course, they'll continue to look and investigate if they see anything else from the images, but so far it looks really good from our surveys.
Yeah, and Eric, thank you for the question. In terms of the operations at America's Spaceport and the Cape associated with getting Orion and SLS ready to fly, we've learned every step of the way, whether it was back in what we called offline processing, which was where we loaded the rocket, or I'm sorry, the upper stage and the spacecraft with hypergalls and high-pressure gases, or whether it was stacking the vehicle in the vehicle assembly building, or whether it was the roll operations or the pad operations. The team has gotten more and more efficient as we've gone through that. Certainly the level of automation has improved, and we still have a few things that we will improve in terms of automation. We will also have, in terms of vehicle turnaround or the pad turnaround, we will apply whatever lessons learned we took from this launch. We are still going through some of the findings and seeing what those mean. The umbilicals and the hydrogen leaks are certainly a key focus area, and some of the software automation in the Launch Control Center are key focus areas.
right, we will turn to the phone bridge for some questions. First up is Bill Harwood with CBS News.
Hey, Gus, thanks very much. One quick question for Mike Seraphin. Based on your data review, if you had astronauts on board for this flight, would anything have changed so far? In other words, are the funnies and things like that you've seen, would they have been sufficient not to press ahead today, or would they be just fine as is?
Bill, thank you for the question. As we talked prior to Artemis 1 on this uncrewed test flight, we had a lean forward strategy in terms of whether we would proceed or accept risk at a decision gate. So that is a tough question relative to measuring against the criteria we've established here on this flight. But that said, in terms of overall system failures, we haven't seen a single thing on the rocket or on the spacecraft that would have caused us to question our reliability or our redundancy, which is why this has largely been a nominal mission. We've proceeded through all these decision gates. We've got some just overall operational and systems lessons learned, as Howard had talked and as Judd has alluded to. There have been a number of things where our plans and our predicts didn't quite match what we thought from an engineering and from a modeling standpoint. We will in turn roll that into crewed flight, but overall it's been largely a green light flight in terms of the decision gates, and that is a very positive thing. I would just keep in mind that that's in the context of this uncrewed test flight where we do have this lean forward strategy.
Up next on the phone, we have Andrea Leinfelder with the Houston Chronicle.
Hi, thanks for taking the question. So my question is for Judd. I want to know more about the mood and mission control. It's been 50 years since we've had a spacecraft built for humans this close to the moon. And now that we're getting these images back, what's the mood like, and how are you reacting to these images, particularly since they are so similar to the Earthrise one from Apollo? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. I would say I would characterize it somewhat, at least the folks that are in the viewing rooms around the flight controllers, as giddy. I mean, people are just amazed, right? As for the flight controllers themselves, they're absolutely astounded as well. That these great videos that they're enabling to get from the Orion spacecraft, as well as that they're just happy that all of the hard work and dedication that they've spent for years, many years, is really paying dividends. I'd say everybody's in a great mood.
Can I jump in on that?
Absolutely.
I'll say that from an engineering team and our program perspective, we had a lot of people in a conference room, and we were like kids. As soon as the pictures came up, people were taking pictures of what was on the screen and just smiles across the board. I mean, this is like I said, just not for me, only a dream for many people who work at NASA and who work with us on our contractor teams and across in both engineering and flight operations. And it's a tremendous day. And so you'll see, you said giddy, I'd say, just big smiles and just like a kid in a candy store, I would say, just how happy we are.
Next on the phone, we have Irene Klotz with Aviation Week.
Thanks very much for the briefing, and thank you, Mike, for your efforts to sharpen comms. It's appreciated. I have three quick questions. One is, do you have the name, this may be for Judd, do you have the nearest named site on the moon's backside that was closest to Orion's point of the closest it came during the flyby, and the speed of Orion when it passed over the Apollo 11 site?
Let's see. I do not have the name of the closest site when we were at closest approach. We certainly can get you that. So, Leah, I think we can get Irene that afterwards. And as far as, I didn't understand your question about the Apollo 11 site.
How fast was Orion moving when it went over the Apollo 11 site? Yeah. And then my other one is, how much time was there a comms? How much time was Orion out of comms in all?
Yep. So we were out of comm for about 34 minutes, and we were going about 5,000. Let's see, when we were over OPF, we were going about 5,023 miles per hour, and then of course we picked up speed after that.
Okay.
All right. Up next on the phone, we have Marcia Dunn with the Associated Press.
Yes, hi. Probably for Mike, if I may. After liftoff, Administrator Nelson gave an A+ grade for liftoff anyway. What grade would you give the mission to date? And I know there's still priorities ahead, namely splashdown, but since it's going so smoothly so far in flight, is there any breath of relief from you yet? Are you reveling in any of this yourself? I mean, what are your emotions? Thanks.
Yeah, Marcia, thank you for the question. We are on flight day 6 of a 26-day mission, so I would give it a cautiously optimistic A+. We've got, again, we're largely complete with the first leg. We're entering the second leg, and then we got the return leg. And our capstone objective, the second half of our priority 1 objective, demonstrate the spacecraft at lunar reentry conditions, is realized on landing and splashdown day and reentry day, as well as priority 3, which is splashdown and recovery of the vehicle. So for me, I said it on launch day, there's relief that we're underway, but there's a heightened sense of awareness that we've got this mission underway, and we've got the Artemis spacecraft in play, and this is again a risk buy down for crewed flight. So we're taking it very seriously. I will rest well on December 11th after splashdown and recovery is complete, as will these gentlemen and their teams. You know, I know how focused this team is. Myself, I tend to just stay focused and continue to do that as long as necessary here. So that's where I'm at.
Next up, we have David Curley with the Discovery Channel.
Thank you very much. Mike Serafin, a couple of questions. One, you talked about a couple of issues that concern you. What is the most concerning? And by the way, I'd like to second Irene's point that thank you for trying to give us more. And secondly, the flyover of Tranquility Base, I know you're, I don't understand all the ways we're going to see images. When will we see those images? Thank you.
Let's see. David, could you clarify your question about concerns or issues? I'm not... You mentioned that there were a couple things that have popped up that have you concerned. I mean, I think we're all hearing that you guys feel really great about the way the mission is going, but you've had a couple of funnies that concern you even in space. Is there an issue that is particularly concerning to you? Okay. Thank you for that clarification, David, and the question. In terms of concerns, you know, they are low level in terms of we don't fully understand what the system and the flight hardware is telling us, but we've got ample redundancy and we are recovering from these funnies that we see. The two where we have anomaly resolution teams active, the first one pertains to something called a latching current limiter, or an LCL, on the power control and distribution unit on the Orion spacecraft. We've got 8 of these, and for some reason they're being uncommanded open, and we don't understand why. They are a inline power feed from the solar arrays to the spacecraft. Because of the level of redundancy, there's if I recall, Howard, there's 3 feeds into each of these, two feeds into the PDCUs, but the way that they're matrixed from the 4 solar array wings There's plenty of redundancy there. We just don't understand why these things are being uncommanded open. But that said, the team is recovering from them. So that they're working their way through an anomaly resolution team and an anomaly resolution process just to understand, again, what the hardware is telling us. The other one pertains to the star trackers. They have random access memory, and they are getting bits set in them that we have to recover with a power cycle. And the most likely cause of that is simply a single event upset associated with a radiation hit. We've had a number of those. The team has had to power cycle the star trackers, and they've recovered every time. Again, we're trying to understand what the hardware is telling us in the anomaly resolution team process for both of those issues. I again don't think that this is a high-level concern, and I guess I'll ask Howard for any additional thoughts on those.
Yeah, let me maybe provide a little bit more detail on the star tracker. It's not so much these are radiation tolerant and hardened boxes, so when a random access memory bit gets set, it automatically corrects it. So it's working, it's operating just fine. What's happening is it tells us, it sets a bit that says, hey, I did have to do this error detection and correction, which is very standard in a lot of processors that require to go to deep space. So it triggers that, hey, some event happened, they fixed it, box is performing nominally, outputting very good navigation data. It just tells us that. And when we reset it, it's just more for resetting that trigger that says, hey, I had an event which I had to do an error correction. So it's not so much the box has an issue and we have to reset the box to get performance out of it. It's more along the lines of indicated there was a problem. The box did its job. It changed, or it did the correction on its own as planned, and then it moved forward, and that's what we're doing. And we've learned a lot from actually our other organizations or other programs. We've talked a lot about them. A lot of people have seen similar events with their star trackers, and that expertise and that knowledge we've been getting shared with other programs. We're collecting that information and reflecting that with our data that we've got. So certainly great data in terms of operating environment that is in deep space and in that radiation environment, and good to know that other programs have seen something similar. We'll try to match that up with our experience base and our data, and we'll have a good information for the MMT coming up.
Thank you for that, Howard. Yeah. I'm confident that the team is going to work through this and understand what the hardware is telling us. And then in terms of the flyover, the Apollo 11, Judd, do you want to take that one?
I'll take that. So since this first OPF maneuver was planned for the Earth-facing side of the moon to be in darkness, we didn't have any plans really to try to image. But we will plan to try and image those sites when we do the return power flyby, which will be on the 5th of December. And so probably take us a day or two to get that imagery back.
All right, up next on the phone, we have Robert Perlman with Collect Space.
Thanks. A question for Mike or Judd. Can you just review what does the mission benefit from a lunar distant retrograde orbit versus doing something like they did on Apollo 8 and entering a more circular orbit around the moon? And then just to fact check, I've heard 80 miles and 81 miles for the closest approach. Is that just a rounding, or what was the exact mileage for the closest approach today?
Do you want to take the mileage, and I'll handle the DRO, Jim?
Yeah. So the closest approach we had to the moon was 70.51 nautical miles, which translates into 81 statute miles.
Okay. And Robert, thank you for the question about the benefit of the distant retrograde orbit. If you look at the systems that we are testing with the Orion spacecraft, the distant retrograde orbit serves as a purposeful stress test of the overall system in terms of the large propulsive maneuvers to enter a lunar orbit and exit a lunar orbit. We know we need 2 maneuvers, so we're performing 2 large maneuvers. In terms of stressing the navigation and communication system, we are going to fly at its farthest point about 268,000 miles from Earth. on this mission. So if you go back to that mission map that I showed you, point 11 on that racetrack is 268,000 miles from Earth. That is the farthest point a human-capable spacecraft will have ever gone when we get there. And that also stressed our communications and navigation and tracking systems from a deep space network and radiometric tracking, as well as a signal strength and communications system on board the Orion spacecraft. So if you're looking at the corners of the boxes in terms of, the power and communications and thermal and nav and all the systems, the distant retrograde orbit is a great mission to stress the system and buy down that risk, and that's why we're flying the distant retrograde orbit.
Next question is from Kristen Fisher with CNN.
Hi, everyone. Sorry to harp on the images, but since I probably deal with live TV and live images more than most on this call, I've got a few questions on that. One, I just want to be crystal clear. Are we done seeing high-res images and video of the close pass of the moon, like the 80 miles off the surface? We're not going to see anything more of that tonight or in the next few days until December 5th when it comes back. That's question number one. And then question number two, I understand that this is not the ISS, it takes more time to get these high-res images down, but are you guys seeing live videos in the control room before we do? And if so, why can't y'all share that data in real time? And we appreciate, being able to see it as it approached the moon, but, now and at other times, I guess, why not share, even if it is low res and not the greatest quality, why not just put that all out there for everyone to see so that, fans of Artemis can follow along live and in real time? Thank you.
All right, thanks for the question, Kristen. So as far as this morning, the images, again, so at the closest approach, the moon facing the Earth part was in darkness, so we don't expect to get very good, clear images of the moon while it was coming into view. But we will downlink those particular high-res videos that we took continuously, both when we were on the backside of the moon and as we were coming through. So it will take us a few days to get those particular images done. The question earlier was about, can we get specific images of the Apollo 11 site? And again, during return power flyby, we expect the Earth-facing part of the sun, of the moon to be in sunlight, and so we will get pictures that will be much better. And it'll be a couple of days after RPF that we will downlink those videos. As I mentioned, Kristen, we did not expect to be able to see live stream video at the same time we're doing all of our file downlinks. And so this was something new that we just learned a day or two ago that we would be able to do. And so as soon as we were able to downlink live stream video of somewhat low res quality, still as you see from the video that we put out on NASA TV, it was still pretty spectacular. But now that is going to be the new normal. We will live stream camera data because we've now figured out that we have the ability to do that and downlink all of our data in high-res resolution data at the same time. So we will put that, and I think they put a website out here where you can go ahead and view that live stream data all the time. So as soon as we have data that we're streaming, we'll send it out to the web so you guys can see it.
And I'll just pile onto that one, Kristen. We will absolutely share more imagery from what we saw today during the outbound powered flyby and the close approach to the moon. As I was leaving the Mission Control Center to head over here today, I'm walking down the hall and I had somebody grab me and say, "Hey, Mike, you need to see this." And they walked me up to a computer, and it was our imagery integration team, and they showed me 4 images of the Orion spacecraft with the solar array wingtip, its service module in the foreground, and then very high resolution images of the moon where it's getting larger and larger and larger. And you could see the curvature of the trajectory and as the spacecraft approached the moon, and you could see individual surface features on the moon, craters and just little contours. That was as I was headed over here, and that is yet to come. So we've got a lot more. We just need to get it off the spacecraft, and then we need to get it through the compliance processes and then the distribution process here on the ground. So there's really kind of two buffers. One is it's recorded on board if it is not broadcast in real time, and then once it gets to the ground, it is archived, number one, and then it's distributed, and then we go through a screening process here, and then it hits the street for folks to view. So just be patient with us as we go through those processes. There is much more to come. It may have been yesterday's news, but when we get it to the ground, we get it distributed, it'll be the first time everybody sees those images, and I can't wait to see more of what we've captured.
I'm excited to say it is today's news. Those are live. Those are live online. Those images that you were just discussing with Orion and the moon as it approached the outbound powered flyby burn. You can find those on our Johnson Space Center Flickr account as well as on images.nasa.gov. But on Flickr, there is an entire album dedicated to Artemis 1. We are uploading those as quickly as we get them. We love to see them too. And additionally, with that live link that's going to be available, there will be some intermittent periods where we don't have views from the spacecraft, but it is a great opportunity to take a look and see what Orion is seeing for itself. Additionally, we're working on a different link that'll be a little bit easier to find too. So just wanted to give it to you as soon as we had it. Our next question is from Daniel Regaria from Ardroni.
How are you doing? Congratulations, first of all. It was amazing to see today your live streaming. The question is, if there were people on board, if there were astronauts on board Orion, everything went okay on this flight, like to fly around the moon? I'm talking about G-forces, environmental things like temperature, pressure, all things. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, I did not follow the question. Could you try to repeat the question?
Oh, yes. Imagine you can put right now astronauts on board of Orion. Was everything okay to fly on this first flight on Orion? Like temperature, pressure, environmental things like G-forces on the launch, and all of this trip.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Daniel. So you're asking if people were flying on board, what were the cabin conditions be like in terms of temperature, pressure, and G-forces? We certainly, from the launch phase all the way through the separation events, it was what we anticipated in terms of G-forces and going through the launch phase. Towards the tail end of the launch profile, the rocket did go into a 3G throttling profile, so that was the maximum amount of force that we saw on the acceleration. And then in flight, we have a shirt sleeve cabin environment. It's in the 70-ish degree range, maybe a little bit warmer than that. And then when we come home, the capsule is expected through the direct skip reentry to see a peak set of G-forces in the 4.5 times the force of gravity range. So in terms of humans' ability to fly on the vehicle, based on the data that we've seen thus far, all signs point to, yes, we're on a good path to do that. And Judd, if you have anything to add to that one.
Nope. I would say also, since this is an uncrewed mission, we don't have the environmental control system that we would have on Artemis 2. And of course, Artemis 2 is going to be that's going to be one of the huge objectives, is to test out that environmental control system, to condition all of the atmosphere in Orion. So, but all that being said, the pressure is going to be 1 atmosphere-ish around 14.7 psi, I think. and similar to what you would have, as Mike said, is a short-sleeve environment.
Yeah. Howard, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just, the picture popped up just a second ago or so. You know, we've got Moonican Campos, we've got accelerometers on the Moonican. I mean, that's one of the things we're measuring, as well as we experience all the flight phases, and certainly very important as we land with the crew capsule and make sure we're measuring and understand the environment that the crew would be in, besides obviously the shirt sleeve environment and the temperatures that we would experience.
Yeah, so that's a great point, Howard. So the response that I gave you, Daniel, was based on the telemeter data that's coming to the ground, based on what the rocket and the spacecraft are telling us, but we actually have witness sensors on board the spacecraft from the perspective of where an astronaut would sit through Moonican Campos and some of the other Moonicans that we have on board. And we'll get that information post-flight.
Thank you all.
And we have time for one last question. This is Micah Maidenberg with the Wall Street Journal.
Hey, all. Thanks for making time. Not sure who this would go to, but I was just curious about Callisto, the tech demo on board. Any initial indications about how it's performing or what you're learning from that demonstration? Thanks a lot.
I think we've had a couple of already live technology, assessments of the Callisto payload, and it's operating very well across the board. We're getting good visuals and good communications, and thanks to Judd's team allocating some bandwidth to allow that to happen. And right now, based on those sessions, things are looking very well with that payload.
All right, that's all the time we have for questions this afternoon. Thank you again to all of our briefers for joining us, all of you for asking questions. Our next live coverage will be of the distant retrograde insertion maneuver. That's Friday, November 25th, and we will be going live on air at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, we do now have live streaming from Orion. That's at go.nasa.gov/3UUN7HR, and we are still working on a link for that. But you can also get daily updates at blogs.nasa.gov/Artemis. Additionally, we do have that Flickr album we mentioned, as well as images.nasa.gov, where we are sharing all the latest and greatest things we are getting from Orion. That'll do it for us today, and thank you all.